Here is a fact that breaks the rules of biology. For 2,000 years, from the height of Athens to the industrial soot of Victorian London, humanity lived alongside a creature that we caught, cooked, and ate by the millions. It was as common as the sparrow, as mundane as the worm. And yet, in all those centuries, across all those civilizations, not a single human being had ever seen one reproduce. There were no eggs, no sperm, no mating rituals. When you cut them open, there were no reproductive organs at all. To the logical mind, the eel was a paradox. It was a creature that existed without a cause, a life without a beginning. Aristotle, the father of biology, looked at this impossibility and concluded the only thing a rational man could. The eel had no parents. He wrote that they were born of the entrails of the earth, that they rose spontaneously from the mud itself, sparked into life by the rain, a golem of wet soil. We tend to laugh at the ancients. We think we have solved the puzzle. But the reality is, Aristotle wasn't entirely wrong to be confused, because the truth of the eel's life cycle is stranger than spontaneous generation. It is a story of a creature that dissolves its own body, erases its own identity, and swims 4,000 miles to a place that shouldn't exist just to die. This is not a fish. It is a ghost in the biological machine. 1876. A young medical student arrives in the port city of Trieste. He is 19 years old, ambitious, desperate to make his name in the sciences. His name is Sigmund Freud. Before he was the father of psychoanalysis, before he theorized about the subconscious or the libido, Freud was a zoologist, and his mission was simple: find the testicles of the eel. It sounds like a joke. It wasn't. For 4 weeks, Freud stood in a laboratory smelling of formaldehyde, slicing open hundreds of eels. He was looking for a scrap of tissue, a cell, anything that would prove the male eel existed. He dissected 400 specimens. He found nothing. He left Trieste in failure. He wrote that the eel was a creature of slippery sexuality, a problem that could not be solved by the knife. But Freud's failure wasn't a lack of skill. It was a trap set by the eel itself. Because the eels Freud was cutting open were not finished products. They were waiting. They were in a state of suspended biological animation, waiting for a signal that might not come for 50 years. The animal we see in the rivers, the yellow eel, is effectively immortal. It can live in a ditch, a pond, or a sewer for decades, eating, growing, waiting. But then, on a dark night in autumn, usually after a storm, the trigger is pulled. Ideally, puberty is a process of maturation. For the eel, it is a process of destruction. The animal begins to digest itself. First, the eyes. They double, then triple in size. The retina changes its chemical composition, shifting from seeing green light to seeing blue. It is preparing for a world of absolute darkness. Next, the stomach. Because it will never eat again, the digestive system becomes a liability. The stomach dissolves, the intestines wither away. The energy is reclaimed, repurposed into swimming muscles, and finally, the reproductive organs Freud couldn't find. But that isn't enough. To fuel the production of millions of eggs, the eel needs calcium. So, it begins to eat its own skeleton. It induces severe osteoporosis. It strips the minerals from its vertebrae to build the shells of its unborn children. The creature that leaves the river is no longer a freshwater fish. It is a hollowed-out vessel, a silver missile, a zombie powered by the consumption of its own domes. And it has one destination: 4,000 miles. That is the distance from the rivers of Europe to the breeding ground. A marathon run by a starving animal. For decades, physicists argued it was impossible. The energy math didn't add up. An animal cannot swim across an ocean on an empty tank. But the eel is the most efficient swimmer in the aquatic world. It does not push water. It slides through the gaps in the fluid dynamics. It is a ghost in the current. And it does not just swim across. It swims down. During the day, to hide from predators and the heat of the sun, the eel dives into the abyss, 600, 800 meters down, into the freezing dark. At night, it rises. Every single day, a vertical migration of half a mile, a heartbeat in the ocean. Why? Because the cold of the deep slows their metabolism. They are refrigerating themselves, slowing down the rotting process of their own bodies just enough to reach the finish line. And then they arrive. The Sargasso Sea. It is the only sea on Earth with no coastline. It is a gyre, a rotating body of water bound not by land, but by currents. A trap in the middle of the Atlantic. This is where they were born, and this is where they have come to die. We know they are here. In 2022, for the first time in history, satellite tags confirmed adult eels entering the Sargasso. We have placed the suspect at the scene of the crime. But here's the thing. We still haven't seen it. They go deep, past the twilight zone, into the crushing pressure of the aphotic zone. 800 meters down, 80 atmospheres of pressure, a world where human bones would snap like dry twigs. Down there, in the cold and the dark, the silver eels, blinded by destiny, bodies dissolving, skeletons soft, finally release their eggs and sperm. And then, they simply vanish. They dissolve into the marine snow. They become the ocean. From that death comes this, the larva, the transparent leaf. It will drift for 3 years on the Gulf Stream, back to the rivers its parents left. And the cycle begins again. We live in an age of total information. We have mapped the surface of Mars. We have sequenced the genome. We have cameras on every street corner and satellites in every orbit. But nature still keeps a few black boxes. We have never seen the eel spawn. We have never witnessed the moment of creation. The eel reminds us that we are not the masters of this planet. We are merely observers, standing on the deck of a boat, peering into water that is too deep for our eyes. It is a biological impossible, a creature that breaks itself to survive, a story that begins and ends in the dark. And perhaps that is exactly how it should be.